Emily Riedel had 3 days before bankruptcy destroyed everything she'd built. What she pulled from the freezing Yukon River instead was $12 million in prehistoric gold. Beneath 8 feet of crushing ice, her dredge hit something that made the metal scream like a wounded animal. Emily stared at her sluice box as nuggets the size of golf balls tumbled out like ancient treasure, spilling from a pharaoh's tomb. But 72 hours earlier, she was just another desperate captain watching her dreams sink into frozen water. Picture this. You're the only woman running a major dredging operation on the Yukon River. Your crew thinks you're crazy. Your competitors want you gone. And you're betting everything on a theory that every expert says is impossible. That's where Emily Riedel stood on a Monday morning in December, staring at foreclosure papers that gave her exactly 3 days to pay $200,000 in outstanding loans. Her dredge, the Eroica, sat locked in ice that had formed 2 weeks early, trapping her season's work beneath a frozen prison. The bank representative, Margaret Chen, delivered the ultimatum with bureaucratic precision that cut deeper than Arctic wind. 3 business days, Ms. Riedel. After that, we seize all assets including the vessel, equipment, and territorial mining rights. Emily's hands trembled, not from cold, but from rage and desperation. She'd spent 5 years building her operation from nothing, proving that a woman could compete in the most dangerous mining territory on Earth. Now some banker in an Anchorage office was about to steal everything because of weather patterns beyond her control. Behind her, footsteps crunched across frozen ground. Her dive tender Jake Morrison approached, carrying thermal imaging equipment that had arrived on the morning flight from Fairbanks. "Emily!" Jake's voice carried excitement that cut through her despair. "The deep current readings. You need to see this. Now imagine you're desperate enough to bet your life on a geological theory that sounds like science fiction. Because what Jake had discovered beneath the Yukon's ice changed everything about placer mining in subarctic rivers. Emily's background in marine biology had taught her things about river systems that traditional miners never considered. While others focused on shallow gravel bars and obvious gold deposits, she'd been studying deep current patterns and prehistoric river channels that lay buried beneath modern waterways. "Look at these thermal signatures," Jake explained, spreading printouts across her kitchen table. "The deep channel runs 40 feet below current ice level, following an ancient riverbed that predates the last ice age. And here's the impossible part. Temperatures down there are actually warmer than surface readings." The thermal imaging revealed geothermal activity that shouldn't exist in subarctic river systems. Underground springs were feeding the deep channel with water temperatures that remained above freezing even when surface conditions dropped to -30. But more importantly, the deep current was moving with enough force to carry heavy materials. Materials like gold nuggets that had been accumulating in underwater deposits for thousands of years. "We could access the deep channel through ice diving operations," Jake continued. "Dangerous as hell, but possible with the right equipment and safety protocols." Emily studied the thermal data with growing excitement. This wasn't just about avoiding bankruptcy anymore. This was about proving a revolutionary theory that could transform subarctic mining operations. But her crew thought she was planning suicide. Ice diving in December? Her dredge operator, Tommy Santos, shook his head in disbelief. "Emily, that water will kill you in under 3 minutes, even with dry suits and surface support. You're talking about conditions that have killed experienced commercial divers." Her engineer, Rachel Kim, pulled up statistics on her laptop that made everyone uncomfortable. Arctic water diving has a fatality rate approaching 15% even under controlled conditions. Add mining equipment, limited visibility, and crushing ice overhead, and you're looking at survival odds that no insurance company would touch. Despite every rational argument, Despite obvious dangers that could kill her entire crew, Emily pressed forward with preparations that bordered on reckless determination. They acquired specialized ice diving equipment from a bankrupt oil exploration company, dry suits rated for prolonged Arctic water exposure, surface-supplied breathing apparatus, and emergency ascent systems designed for offshore drilling operations. The modifications to her dredge required welding equipment through the night and engineering solutions that had never been attempted in subarctic conditions. Underwater lighting systems, heated tool storage, and emergency surface communication that could function through 8 feet of solid ice. "This is insane," Rachel muttered while installing thermal monitoring equipment. "We're basically building a submarine mining operation with hardware store parts and desperation." But Emily's marine biology training revealed advantages that traditional hard rock miners couldn't recognize. She understood water pressure dynamics, underwater navigation, and aquatic equipment operation in ways that gave her crew capabilities beyond normal dredging techniques. Their first test dive nearly ended in disaster. Emily descended through a manually cut ice hole into water so cold it felt like liquid nitrogen against her dry suit. Visibility extended barely 3 feet through silt and ice crystals that swirled like underwater snow. The deep channel lay 40 feet below surface ice, accessible only through a narrow corridor between submerged boulders and ice formations that could shift without warning. One wrong move could trap a diver permanently in an underwater maze with no possibility of surface rescue. But at 38 feet depth, Emily's headlamp illuminated something that made her forget every danger. The riverbed was lined with gold deposits so rich they glowed in her lights like treasure from a sunken galleon. "Jake!" she gasped into her communication system. "I'm looking at nuggets the size of chicken eggs scattered across the bottom like someone spilled a jewelry box." Her first collection dive yielded results that shattered every expectation. 47 ounces of gold in a single 40-minute underwater session, worth over $88,000 at current market prices. But the deep channel held concentrations that defied modern mining experience. Some sections of riverbed contained over 200 ounces per cubic yard. Richness that exceeded famous California gold rush sites by orders of magnitude. Word spread through the Nome mining community faster than news of a ship rescue. Within days, competitors were asking pointed questions about Emily's sudden equipment acquisitions and mysterious diving operations. But the real threat came from Bering Sea Mining Corporation, a multinational operation with resources to crush individual miners through legal warfare and territorial claim jumping. Corporate scouts began conducting aerial reconnaissance over Emily's operation, documenting equipment and techniques that could be duplicated by better-funded competitors. Worse, they started filing environmental challenges, claiming that ice diving operations violated federal safety regulations. "They want us shut down before we can prove how rich this channel really is," Jake observed, while reviewing legal documents that arrived by certified mail. "Once word gets out about what's down there, every major corporation will flood this area with industrial equipment." The psychological pressure of racing against bankruptcy while conducting life-threatening diving operations began affecting crew morale in ways that went beyond normal mining stress. Rachel started having nightmares about equipment failures that could leave Emily trapped beneath the ice. Tommy developed chronic anxiety about the dredge's structural integrity under Arctic conditions. But Emily pushed deeper into the channel system, discovering underwater formations that suggested the deep current extended for miles beneath the frozen river. Each dive revealed new deposits, new concentrations, new evidence that they'd stumbled onto something unprecedented in modern placer mining. The largest individual nugget emerged during her 8th deep dive, a specimen weighing 23.7 ounces that required both hands to lift from the riverbed. Its purity approached 94% natural gold, making it one of the finest examples ever recovered from Yukon River deposits. But something else emerged from the deep channel that no one expected. Artifacts that predated known indigenous cultures by thousands of years, carved tools, worked metals, and stone implements that suggested organized mining activity in prehistoric times. "Someone else was working this channel," Emily whispered, examining fossilized implements that had been perfectly preserved in oxygen-free underwater conditions. "Someone who understood deep current mining thousands of years before European contact." The artifacts raised questions that attracted attention from universities, government agencies, and institutions that operated with resources far beyond typical mining claim disputes. Carbon dating placed the oldest specimens at over 6,000 years, making them among the earliest evidence of systematic gold extraction in North America. Corporate surveillance escalated beyond routine reconnaissance into active interference with their operations. Mysterious equipment failures began occurring with suspicious frequency. Communication systems malfunctioning during critical dives, heating equipment failing in life-threatening conditions, safety gear developing problems that could have killed crew members. "Someone's trying to shut us down permanently," Rachel observed after discovering sabotage damage to their primary air compressor. "This isn't claim jumping anymore. Someone wants us gone before we can document what's really down there." The breakthrough dive occurred at 6:23 a.m. on a Thursday morning when Emily descended deeper into the channel than any previous exploration. 47 feet below surface ice, her headlamp illuminated an underwater cavern where prehistoric floods had concentrated gold deposits over geological time frames. The cavern stretched beyond her lights, containing compressed layers of gold-bearing material that extended through gravel deposits accumulated over millennia. Initial estimates suggested over 8,000 ounces in immediately accessible underwater formations. But accessing the main deposits required diving through chambers where water temperature dropped to near freezing, where equipment failure meant certain death, and where structural collapse could trap divers permanently in underwater tombs beneath crushing ice. "I'm looking at walls lined with gold veins that run through solid bedrock," Emily reported through her communication system. "It's like someone painted lightning bolts with molten treasure." Extraction operations required specialized underwater mining techniques that had never been attempted in subarctic conditions. Hydraulic suction systems operated through surface connections, while Emily worked 40 feet underwater in visibility conditions that barely extended beyond arm's reach. The technical challenges multiplied exponentially. Water pressure at depth affected equipment performance in ways that surface testing couldn't predict. Ice formations shifted overhead, constantly threatening to block ascent routes. Emergency protocols required split-second timing that could mean the difference between successful extraction and fatal disaster. But the gold kept coming. Despite every obstacle, every equipment failure, every indication that the deep channel wanted to remain undisturbed, extraction continued at unprecedented rates for underwater placer mining operations. Daily yields averaged between 180 and 220 ounces, depending on weather conditions and ice stability. Individual nuggets emerged weighing 8, 12, even 15 ounces each. Specimens so pure that collectors offered premium prices far above commodity gold values. The psychological toll of constant underwater mining in life-threatening conditions began affecting Emily in ways that went beyond physical exhaustion. Sleep became impossible despite crushing fatigue. Appetite disappeared, even though Arctic diving demanded massive caloric intake. Strange dreams plagued her during brief rest periods, vivid nightmares about being trapped beneath ice, while something ancient watched from the darkness below. She started finding herself holding her breath unconsciously during surface activities, as if her body was preparing for underwater emergencies. But the deep channel revealed secrets that transformed archaeological understanding of prehistoric North American civilizations. The fossilized tools showed evidence of sophisticated metallurgy and engineering knowledge that contradicted accepted timelines of indigenous technological development. Most disturbing, analysis of the artifacts revealed trace elements of gold processing, evidence that ancient miners had developed underwater extraction techniques that wouldn't be rediscovered by European cultures for thousands of years. Who had been working the deep channel before recorded history? What had they discovered that was worth developing such sophisticated underwater mining operations? And what had happened to them? The first major catastrophe struck during Emily's 15th deep dive when shifting ice formations blocked her primary ascent route. Emergency protocols kicked in as surface crews scrambled to maintain communication while she searched for alternative routes through underwater passages that grew more dangerous with each passing minute. For 23 minutes, Emily was trapped 45 feet underwater with limited air supply and no clear path to the surface. Her headlamp revealed passages that seemed to lead deeper into the channel system, but following them meant risking permanent entrapment in underwater mazes with no possibility of rescue. When she finally reached the surface through a secondary route, hypothermia had begun affecting her judgment and motor coordination. Emergency medical protocols required immediate evacuation to Anchorage for treatment that cost $18,000 in helicopter transport and hospital fees. But the near-fatal incident exposed something extraordinary in the deepest part of the channel system. While searching for escape routes, Emily had discovered a natural underwater vault where ancient floods had concentrated gold deposits in formations that staggered imagination. "I'm talking about nuggets the size of softballs," she told her crew during recovery briefings. Concentrations so rich, the entire chamber floor was covered with gold, like someone had carpeted it with treasure. Geological analysis of samples from the deep vault revealed gold purities approaching 97%, among the highest natural concentrations ever documented in placer mining operations. The formation suggested prehistoric river conditions that had concentrated precious metals through processes that no longer occurred in modern waterways. Total extraction from the deep channel reached 6,847 ounces over 8 weeks of intensive underwater mining that pushed equipment and human endurance far beyond safe operational parameters. Base gold value at current market prices of $1,875 per ounce approached $12.8 million. Premium collector specimens, authenticated prehistoric artifacts, and historical significance added an additional $3.2 million in specialized market value. Territorial rights to connected underwater chambers suggested potentially $40 million in future extraction opportunities from channels that extended throughout the Yukon River system. $16 million from a $200,000 bankruptcy notice, and a theory about deep current mining that everyone said was impossible. But as operations concluded and equipment was prepared for winter storage, underwater monitoring equipment detected increasing water temperature fluctuations that defied seasonal patterns. The deep channel was warming from below, suggesting geothermal activity that had been dormant for geological periods. "Something's changing down there," Jake muttered, studying temperature readings that showed steadily increasing thermal activity in areas they'd never excavated. "Something we disturbed but can't control." Corporate surveillance teams from Bering Sea Mining disappeared overnight, abandoning monitoring equipment worth hundreds of thousands of dollars without explanation or retrieval attempts. Federal regulators who had been demanding safety compliance reports stopped returning phone calls. Most disturbing, indigenous communities along the Yukon River began performing traditional ceremonies at sites connected to the deep channel system. Rituals designed to appease water spirits and maintain balance with forces that outsiders didn't understand. "They say the river is waking up," Tommy whispered after speaking with tribal elders who refused to explain their ceremonial activities. "Something that's been sleeping under the water for thousands of years, something that should stay asleep." The underwater monitoring systems detected increasing activity patterns that suggested the channel system was responding to their excavation in ways that followed organization rather than random geological processes. Water flow patterns changed. Temperature distributions shifted. Depth measurements indicated structural modifications that couldn't be explained by natural river dynamics. Deep beneath the Yukon's frozen surface, something was stirring back to life. Something that the prehistoric miners had encountered, worked with, and perhaps tried to contain through their sophisticated underwater operations. Emily Riedel counted $16 million in gold and artifacts while watching instruments register activity that suggested their underwater excavation had awakened geological forces that had been dormant since the last ice age. The fossilized tools implied ancient civilizations had faced similar discoveries. The temperature changes indicated something vast and patient stirring beneath the riverbed. What if the gold had never been the Yukon's real treasure? What if it had always been payment, protecting something far more valuable and dangerous that lay deeper beneath the water? In the deepest underwater chambers, temperatures continued rising for the first time in thousands of years. Ice formations that had been stable since prehistoric times were melting from below, revealing passages that led deeper into underground water systems than any modern equipment could explore. The channel was opening from the inside out. Whatever slept beneath the Yukon River was generating its own heat as it responded to surface disturbances for the first time in millennia. Their $16 million fortune might have been the most expensive wake-up call in river system history. The ancient miners had found the same underwater deposits, developed the same sophisticated extraction techniques, and faced the same consequences for disturbing channels that were meant to remain frozen and dormant. Just like the prehistoric civilizations that left only tools and mysteries, they'd struck gold beyond imagination. Just like those vanished cultures, they'd awakened something beneath the water that made their treasure look insignificant compared to the forces they'd disturbed. In the silence beneath Arctic ice, something ancient was stirring back to consciousness. Something that made $16 million look like the down payment on a debt that could never be repaid. Emily Riedel's 3 days to avoid bankruptcy had become a countdown to something far more dangerous than financial ruin. They'd become the timer on a geological alarm that had been set by prehistoric miners who understood that some treasures cost more than gold to claim. The Yukon River was waking up, and the price of that awakening might be higher than any modern civilization could afford to pay.